Alright, so as you can tell, I've repositioned my camera and I'm going to reposition my angle, and we've had a complaint, and it's a valid one, that my teeth are not the best. So I'm in Spain, I drink a lot of coffee and I drink a lot of red wine, and the way the videos are edited and my playing with color does not give my teeth the best representation, but they're not rotting, they're very, very healthy, they're just really discolored. And so I apologize about that, but if this is not acceptable, we'll do something else. So that's the first order of business today. Creative criticism, something I can do something about, I'll do it. Other stuff is just chaff, and it lets me know I'm over some kind of target. And a good military expression, because I am a veteran. So, as a veteran and being part of a military, not only are you taught to think as a group, but you're very much taught to think individualistically. What can I do in this situation? Can I be a leader, or can I be a follower? Will I be a better leader at the moment, or should I just follow? And that's what you do in the military. It's not brainwashing. It is teaching you to think for yourself at any moment in time, giving you individual power so you can respond as a collective. And I'm sounding like the member of the queue already. Oh my Lord. Yeah, I'm not sure how this whole queue thing happened. And we're gonna look at the square a little later on. That we looked at yesterday, that I looked at yesterday and was just blown away by. But first of all, we have some constant and leaking information that needs to be addressed. And we've created the perfect storm so that people can't think and focus, because they are in so many different layers of denial and going through the layers of grief. And it's not layers of grief, it's just when you have something that impacts you so big that you can't even put your head around it, you react in a distinctive style that is just to deny what's before you. It happened early in the 60s and 50s, when a daughter would get inadvertently pregnant, accidentally pregnant, and she was showing, the family would be in complete denial that she's pregnant. No, she's just putting on weight, she's holding water. Or that somebody in the family is an alcoholic. You know, your relative, I'm not even going to put a label on it, has a drinking problem. No, he can handle it, he's fine, or she's fine. You know, stay out of their business. But when you know something's wrong, when you smell smoke where there's not supposed to be smoke, then there's probably a fire. And again, a good analogy from the South: if it quacks like a duck, it has feathers like a duck, it waddles like a duck, chances are you got yourself a duck there. So what we have with this Trump allowing for the Department of Defense in the middle of a pandemic to green light the release of these 3 incredible videos of UFOs that have the supporting panic of the pilots, and the pilots are allowed to talk about it in the press when it first happened, means that, look, here is the slow process of warming the civilization to aliens actually being on planet Earth. And it's what we call the boiling frog theory in politics. And that is, if you just slowly warm up the water for a frog, you can boil it over a period of time. But if you throw it into boiling water, it's going to jump right out. So these 3 videos were leaked. Man, first of all, to pull video from a plane and to maintain that in that archive, and then to be able to leak it. The chain of custody of that video is so small that the persons that leaked it, and this is, you know, the Department of Defense says, you know, it's not sensitive information, just the screen itself and the tracking system of the fighter pilots and the fighter systems is sensitive information. There's no way the Navy would have been cool with this being leaked and not have the chain of custody and everybody that was in charge of this video, which is again, very small number of people, to be held to account and to go to military court of hearing. They're just. I was 18 and now in my 50s, but you know, military tribunal for these people to have charges pressed against them for leaking military secrets. These pilots should have signed a non-disclosure agreement that you're not, like it used to be, you know, Blue Book, all of this, the discouragement of there being any acknowledgement of UFOs by the flying community was death to your career. And if you did talk about it, you'd have to sign a non-disclosure agreement about what you saw. And it's not a non-disclosure agreement, but it's part of your secrecy agreement. Whenever you move up the food chain in the military, you get more clearance, and that clearance says whatever happened here, you don't talk about it. And so that's just part of serving in the military. That's part of serving the government. There's just stuff you don't talk about. So Trump, in the middle of a pandemic, green lights, all right, I'm going to be the UFO president. Let's do that. No, he already has plenty of PR issues to deal with on a daily, momentarily. It's just a blizzard of PR crud that is hitting him every day. Do you think he would say, what? Release these videos? No. And it wouldn't even be him. It would be his chief of staff. And it would be everybody down the food chain from the Pentagon that would say, no, we're not going to do that. That's not, unless there's a compelling reason to keep moving it up the food chain to finally get to Donald Trump, the orange man, who's already orange man bad. He's got enough on his plate. For him to be the UFO president and for him to say, yeah, I'm okay with that. And mind you, this guy is a master at PR. He doesn't want to be labeled that loony guy. And his language was really precise. If this is real, then it is something. Before the president released this, he had a small meeting about it. That I cannot believe for a minute, because the answer right off the bat is no, no, more no, and a whole lot of no. And if that no is not enough for you, I've got truckloads in the White House lawn ready for more no's. And I can do a mass production of no's for whatever you're telling me, unless you have something so compelling that makes me say, yes, I will be the UFO. I will be the Area 51 loony president. Fine, I'll take that bullet. I'll take that arrow. You've got something here. Because presidents often take hits for the government that just previous administrations, or for whatever reason, it's their turn, they know it, and they've got to do it. So World War II came around, and when that responsibility came to the president, he didn't shirk it. He tried to get around it, but when it came time and the country stood up, we all stood up. And so a kind of pressure hit President Trump for him to say it's okay for this to be released, for us to acknowledge that there are UFOs. And in acknowledging there are UFOs, we are therefore acknowledging aliens. That is the ugly word that has not been released yet. On top of that, the president has been, for the last couple of months, preparing the government first for an EMP. Even though we don't feel a nuclear threat is happening, we have just secured our entire, or made efforts to secure our grid against an EMP, our power grid against an EMP for the United States. That executive order came out, and I have a video on that. The amount of asteroid activity and comet activity is just insane. Insane. So we just had a new asteroid that actually came in within our satellite. within our satellite network. So we had an asteroid that invaded that space, came that close to planet Earth, and did not fall to planet Earth, but came that close into planet Earth, and then went back out. This kind of comet activity is bizarre. The explosion of Comet Atlas, which is beyond doubt at this point an explosion. That comet has debris floating through our solar system, our inner solar system, and the government is not saying a single word about that. We're not tracking it, we're not talking about it, because it's going like that. So, I mean, some of it's going to be impacting Earth, I guess, at some point. And yet, NASA and JPL are quiet on that. And I've proven that that is not a gravitational effect. And we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that comets and asteroids are not laden with water, and they are not outgassing vapors, because all an asteroid is, all a comet is, a lump of dust and rocks. We have landed devices on there. We have put holes in comets, at least the Japanese have, and we've measured the what is on the surface and around the comet, and it's just dust. I mean, there may be particles and traces here and there and stuff, but there's no outgassing. The outgassing, to us who believe that the sun is an electrical sun, and it's not a what's the current thing right now, that it's a nuclear sun, a nuclear belief, and that somehow it has not just consumed itself, because that's what a nuclear pile does. It just consumes itself, especially over the billions of years of a sun. This should have consumed itself. No. And the sunspots are black. What does black say? Black says the surface of the sun is cooler than the umbra and the corona. So the sun is a giant, massive metal, metallic, and super dense metallic objects that attracts, that has one charge and is attracting another, and the same as a welding rod. The welding rod analogy is the best analogy. The tip of a welding rod, or the welding rod itself, is cool during the welding process. But at that point where those two the negative and positive charges are meeting at that juncture where the weld rod is touching, that's where that massive heat is. So the surface of the sun is roughly 6,000 to 8,000 degrees Kelvin, but the corona of the sun is 1,000,000 degrees Kelvin. So what we have is the sun attracting one charge, and then because it has that opposite and equal negative charge or positive charge, I forget the difference, but it's repelling, and it's repelling what comes to it faster than when it comes to it. So that's part of how a welding rod works. That is how the release of energy of the sun works. And so we've known for a long time that the sun is an electrical event. It is not at all a nuclear event. And the one final piece of the puzzle is that these comets have their tail always pointing out whenever they're going around the sun. And so when their tail is pointing out, that means that they're radiating out energy. And it also means that the comet, that pile of rock and dust, has one charge, and it's meeting its equal and opposite other charge in that solar wind. And so that's why that tail is always pointing out. So let's talk about comets, and let's talk about Planet 9. I'm going to leave a link to a great job that a scientist does in discussing the Planet 9 existence. And it is a CalTec professor, Konstantin Batigian. I'm destroying it, sorry. And Professor David Jewett at UCLA. They had their opposite views, and that's great to have in science. It's two opposite views of a theory. And you know that what we do, especially in the United States, well, my view is just so much better than yours. I'm just going to crush yours, and I cancel your view. I cancel your view. I cancel you. And you see that in my comments. Oh, well, you're wrong about this. Well, you're canceled. I was wrong. I bore bad fruit, and I apologize. Is the tree bad? Oh, we're going to find out over time. But Professor Constantine from CalTec, I'm going to use his first name, and I'm sure he understands. He has the math and the theories that are long-standing proving there's Planet 9. We have the Sumerian tablets that have the long-standing discussions of Planet 9. We have several ancient cultures, including the Egyptians, that talk about a Planet 9 and a large planet that has a long elliptical orbit and visits very rarely. But finally, comets. Why do comets come back? Let's think about that. Let's really think about that. Why do comets come back? Is it that they do a loop around an object, and then something just, they get out there like a rubber band and they just suddenly, whoa, come back? Because that's not what happens with any of our Voyager craft that have used gravity of other planets. Once they loop around that planet, there's nothing bringing them back. And anything that loops around our sun, when it goes, it goes. There's got to be another binary object for that comet to loop around and use its gravity to come back around to this planet and this solar system and this sun. Do you understand the implications of that? That is a whole other understanding of comets that NASA, JPL, science will not discuss. Why do comets loop back around? And why do they do it in the form that they do? The only answer is what this CalTech professor is postulating, and the math proves that there's another huge massive object out there that is causing these comets to loop back around. It's a binary track. That's the only answer to the returning comet. Because they are, as one would say, interstellar visitors, like Oumuamua and Borisov have been labeled, because there's just nothing in their trajectory to draw them back. We have a Space Force now. We have a secure grid against an EMP, even though we don't have any threat of war. I mean, we're saber rattling with China, but that's not enough to prevent for an EMP. So the Trump administration is doing something. The new asteroid has just come into play. It's asteroid 2020 HS7. If you want to look it up, it's brand spanking new. I mean, we have a ton of asteroids, 2019s and 2020s, and we should have known about these. This new Pan star and Atlas system shouldn't be warning us about these things. There's much more involved. And the Q square, I'm going to end it by saying, please review that video. The things I've been talking about and that are all discussed in the whole Awakening Project. Q is just a part of it. It's much more than I can even get into right now. Next video.